Dear friends, partners, viewers from across the world, and esteemed participants, welcome to today's Jewish-Muslim Solidarity Rally, organized by the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement. My name is Michal Victoria Nachshon, a British-Israeli Jewish woman. I'm very proud to be standing here today hosting this important rally. Today, we gather as Muslims and Jews from around the world, bound together by a shared commitment to peace, security, understanding, and justice. The tragic massacre that took place on October 7th shook us all to our core. The loss of innocent lives and the pain inflicted upon families and communities is a stark reminder of the darkness that hatred can bring. In the wake of this horrifying event, we have witnessed a distressing rise in anti-Semitism, an alarming trend that threatens the fabric of our societies. But we refuse to let hatred define us. Today, we come together to denounce anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and all forms of bigotry that threaten to divide us. We stand united against hatred, determined to build bridges of solidarity and build a safer and more harmonious world for us all and future generations. As Muslims and Jews, our histories are intertwined, grounded in shared values, and we draw strength from our common heritage, exemplified by stories of cooperation and mutual support between our people throughout the ages. In this virtual space, we transcend geographical boundaries and unite as a global community. Our presence here today is a call to action, demonstrating our unwavering resolve to stand shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, against all forms of discrimination. Together, we will encounter hate with love, ignorance with education, and division with unity. We are honored to have an extraordinary lineup of speakers who will share their insights, experiences, and visions for a world free from prejudice. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you joining us in this important endeavor. Your presence here today is a testament to the strength of the ancient ties that bind all of us and the collective resolve to forge a better global future. Now, let's get started. So I'm very honored to introduce our first guest of this rally, Valentina Lescage, member of Combat Anti-Semitism Movement Advisory Board and former Minister of Labor and Social Affairs in Albania, all the way from Albania. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me say from the beginning that I'm really pleased that I have a chance to address this rally against the hatred. Everybody knows that anti-Semitism is rising everywhere after the tragic day of 7th of October. Each passing day we see more hate and more attacks for Jews around the world. To mention some statistics, in the Netherlands, I have noticed that 818% increase in the anti-Semitic incidents has been tracked last month. And not only that, but French Interior Ministry said that 1,247 anti-Semitic incidents had been reported since 7 October. Nearly 3 times more than 2022 whole year. Denmark cases were up to 24 times from the average of the last year. These are not single statistics. The question of rights to people is not statistics, are human beings who live under the terror of the hate. We see everyday reports in media where women, men, school children are attacked or are living with the fear of the next day. This situation has changed completely the life of Jewish people. I'm from Albania, as you said, and we have not that situation with the anti-Semitism. Albania is a country where people belong to 3 major religions, but for whom religion has never been a dividing factor or a source of hate. We are proud of what our people did during the World War II. when they offered shelter and protection to the Jewish community and refugees. This was something Albanians of all faiths did together, Muslim and Christian. But I believe that tradition is not encoded in DNA. Instead, it is something that has to be taken care of, to be guarded and nurtured. And we must remember, the hate that begins with the Jewish never stops with the Jews. It extends to others as well. We should understand this. That is why we are here today, to be together against terrorism, to promote interfaith solidarity, protection, and well-being. I believe that the adoption of IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is crucial in fighting this phenomenon, because you cannot fight something that you don't know. While the IHRA is certainly a standard and a very important tool in this fight, it is by no means enough. We should not forget about the memory on the other side. For many people nowadays, the Holocaust is an increasingly vague concept. And the lessons the world drew from that horrific crime against the humanity are losing their strength and ability to shock as it was before. On the other hand, the attitude to Hebrews and Judaism has been affected by myths and prejudices. Very little is spoken about Hebrews' role in the Western civilization, as a matter of fact. If we want to do something, we have to invest in education for young people and in building the human relations between them, because the investment is not only for today, on contrary, is for the future as well. It is for social harmony and for sustainable society that we all need and deserve, and is under the risk today. Beside the universities, it is important to reach young people that are in the grassroots. It's not enough to involve in the universities, I think. We can do this through our collaboration with civil society organizations, with Muslim organizations as well, with media and other influencers that can be our very good allies. We can do it because I believe in CAM and, of course, in other organizations, because CAM is a great coalition and I think has the strength and capability to do this and to fight in this really very important battle for the future, not only for Jewish people, not only for Israel, but for all of our future as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Valentina, for reminding us of the historical bond in Albania between all the faiths, and that we're dealing with human beings and not statistics, and the importance of education. Next to join us is Ahmed Qureshi, a Pakistani journalist and war correspondent. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ahmed. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me in. It's an honor to be here and to join all of you very distinguished speakers here. I've read about the Holocaust since I was a kid. Ironically, I did that when I was in Kuwait, where I was born. And ironically, Kuwait is the birthplace of Fatah and Yasser Arafat and the PLO. And that's where the armed Palestinian struggle began, really, back in the 60s and the 70s. Before, of course, it spread out across the region. I probably never understood how it must have felt like during that genocide that took place years ago or decades ago, the Holocaust, until I saw the clips and videos from the October 7 terror attack. And of course, until I saw the pro-Hamas rallies in some cities and the hateful outbursts on social media. Most of you have seen all of those. That's when I thought to myself, that's what the Jewish people must have felt in the 1930s and early 1940s in the build-up to the Holocaust. I traveled last month to a Gulf state and met a friend from Israel at a think tank. I felt so sorry to see how shaken she was, though she made no effort to show it. But I could feel what she was going through. She was even afraid to be at that academic event, despite being in one of the most peaceful and friendly places in the Middle East, in that Gulf state. And that was last month. Just as so many mourn the loss of life of innocents in Gaza due to a cynical and reckless war started by a terrorist organization, every decent human being can see that the depravity and viciousness that Hamas militants exhibited and the mutilation they inflicted on the bodies of innocent people, innocent Israelis, on October 7 was blindly driven by hate and anti-Semitism. As a Pakistani and as a Muslim, I can never accept this hatred that Hamas and extremists at rallies tried to legitimize against Jews. And they did so apparently because they say they have a political difference. I condemn anti-Semitism in the same breath that I condemn Islamophobia. And I thank so many Jewish friends that I know inside Israel and everywhere who joined Muslims in rejecting hate in different places of the world. I know some great Jewish friends and organizations that raised their voices against hatred for Muslims and for any religion, and for many religions and peoples in different places, including, of course, Bosnia. And at this difficult time, people like me stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters in complete solidarity against this hate directed at you. To my Jewish friends, you are a fellow people of the book for us, fellow partners in this region, and you're part of this region's history. No one can deny that. And of course, above all, and before everything else, your fellow human beings, please know that we Muslims reject hate directed toward you because of your identity and faith. And I'm encouraged to see voices rising across this region, across my region, in Pakistan, in the Gulf, in Arab countries, people who are speaking up and trying to make their voices heard and say, we do not accept this. And of course, they do it amid all of these loud voices that are trying to legitimize and mainstream hate. Political disputes and differences can never legitimize hate toward a people. Let's resolve not to legitimize anti-Semitism. And thank you, Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, for bringing Muslims and Jews and others together on this platform. Thank you very much.
Much, Mr. Qureshi, not only for your empathy and for standing with both people, but for reminding us all that this is a call to action, that speaking out and having not keep those words in the backstage is the most important part, because so many people are afraid or hesitant to do so right now. So thank you so much for that. Next to join us is Eli Kohanim, senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum and former U.S. Deputy Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, as well as a proud Persian American Jewish woman. Thank you so much for joining us, Eli, here today. So great to have you.
Thank you for having me, and my deep thanks to Combat Anti-Semitism Movement for hosting this very important conversation at this time. Earlier this week, we heard reports that since Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel, anti-Semitic incidents in the United States have tripled. I want to say that again, tripled in the United States. What we witnessed worldwide before Israel had a chance to retaliate against Hamas's attack or identify their dead, never mind have a chance to bury their dead, we saw pro-Hamas rallies take place in cities all around the world. And what we know is that often these rallies have turned into Jewish hate fests. We've seen Nazi and terrorist flags flown at these rallies. We've heard chants of "From the River to the Sea," which is a call for genocide against the Jews. We've heard these chants at these rallies. And we've seen these mob events get violent. And in the case of the Jewish man, Paul Kessler in Los Angeles, it was deadly. Let me remind our audience that Hamas is a designated terrorist organization by most countries in the world, including in the United States. Hamas is based on a radical Islamist ideology as part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it is funded, trained, and armed by the radical Islamic Republic of Iran regime. I myself have personally partnered with Muslims in the Arab world, both in my official capacity and since I've left government. I've partnered with and met many Muslims in the Arab world and from South Asia who reject radical Islam, who reject a jihadi Islam, who reject Hamas along with every other terror group. And many of those incredible and brave, courageous individuals are on this call and this event today with us. These voices in the Muslim world seek a path of moderation. They seek a Middle East that would benefit from peace and prosperity. They long for a Middle East that has room for Shia and Sunni, for Christian, Jew, Yazidi, Baha'i, and atheists, all the same, as has existed in the region in previous eras before radical Islamic ideologies were permitted to take root. I myself am a daughter of the Middle East, and I urge everyone who's joining us today to take inspiration from these individuals and take inspiration from those governments like the Kingdom of Bahrain, which has stated emphatically that they condemn Hamas and the atrocities which Hamas committed on October 7th. Take inspiration from the government of the United Arab Emirates, which just last week stated that the Abraham Accords are here to stay and that nothing will waver the UAE from the path of peace. Take inspiration and join all those who seek the path of moderation, coexistence, and peace. Let our voices be louder than that of the haters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellie, for reminding us that important distinction with radical Islam and also how not for granted and inspiring it is for all the Muslims community to come together and share those words. I am honored to invite our next guest, Azra Nomani. I hope I pronounced that correctly. A former Wall Street Journal reporter and a senior fellow in the practice of journalism at the Independent Women's Network. She is also a co-founder of the Muslim Reform Movement and the Pearl Project. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Azra. It's so great to see you with your shirt. Beautiful. Thanks for your support.
Absolutely. If my words cannot express my feelings, I wanted to wear a sartorial symbol of my support for the people of Israel and the Jewish people around the world. This is a hoodie that I purchased in a Palestinian shop selling secondhand clothes right outside of Bethlehem. It says Israel Defense Forces. And my lifelong journey as a journalist means that ultimately what I am here to testify to is the truth. And it is the truth that I have come to know in the most deepest corners of my heart. And I want to take you in just these few minutes on my own journey of understanding and enlightenment that brings me here to sit before all of you in support of this global humanity that we're sharing. It was on January 23rd, 2002, that a dear colleague of mine from the Wall Street Journal that I have here with me today, his smile says everything. His name was Daniel Pearl. He was a journalist and a friend for this young Muslim immigrant who didn't understand American culture. Danny was my friend in the newsroom at the Wall Street Journal's Washington, D.C. bureau. He introduced me to music and open mic night. I never had a prom because I was a good Muslim girl and wasn't allowed to go out on a date with a guy. So at the age of 28, Danny helped me throw my first party. The police came very appropriately, and it was called the Midsummer Night's Prom. I finally had my prom. But on January 23rd, 2002, my friends, that was the last moment that I saw my friend. he left a home that I had rented in Karachi, Pakistan. That home was on a street called Zamzama. My Muslim brothers and sisters know very well what that word means. It captures the holy water that Ishmael supposedly kicked up in the sands of Mecca when Hajar was left there by Abraham. A Syrian-American poet once wrote that if only Hajar and Sarah had kicked that old man to the curb, maybe we would have peace in the Middle East. But there I sat and stood on Zamzama Boulevard, symbolizing this holy water that has supposedly never stopped flowing in Mecca. And I said goodbye to my friend. And in the days later, we learned that Danny had been kidnapped in the name of my faith, in the name of Islam. We learned days later that he was now an agent for Mossad because his identity as a Jewish son of Israel was revealed. And weeks later, my dear friends, we learned with the world that men arrived in this cell that Danny had been held captive with two weapons. One was a knife and the other was a camera. And with that knife, they slaughtered Danny. They cut him into pieces and then they documented it with that other weapon, the camera. To do what? To spread terror. And it did send a chill through my heart as a Muslim. But it also gave me this clarity that the psychologists called post-traumatic growth, a clarity that it is our farz as Muslims, our duty to stand up to the hate that was used to justify Danny's murder. The men who killed Danny then lay their rugs on the floor in prostration to Mecca, as if they had divine mandate for what they had done. And what did they do? They raised their hands as we do in prayer and said, what? Allahu Akbar. God is great. And when did we hear these words again? October 7th, 2023. Everything has changed in the 21 years since Danny's murder, but nothing has changed. And it is our duty, it is our farz to stand up to the machine, the network of those who want to hate Jews and destroy the state of Israel. For just a minute, I'm going to take you on this journey with me. We went from this simple reality, kidnapped, right? Images, innocent people kidnapped. And how did we come to this from a school in Northern Virginia at Langley High School? The US flag stars replaced with the swastika by students, teenagers. It is because of this network that I call the woke army, the leftists working with the Islamists. And
Azra, we only have a minute to go.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
These are samples. Omar Suleiman, Palestinian Youth Network, U.S. Campaign for Palestine Rights. And then, who are they working with? None other than the Party for Socialism and Liberation. What we face, my friends, is a network that we must compete with and we must defeat. And this, right before us today, are the people who are the manifestations of Danny's spirit and every person who has been taken from this earth in the name of faith. So with this hoodie, gotten in a sacred place, I stand with all of you, and I thank all of you for standing with courage, because indeed courage is contagious, and with your voices, you will inspire so many as you do me. Thank you for the honor of allowing me to be with you, and I will stand with you till the end of this earth. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Azra, for sharing the harrowing, chilling story and the tragic loss of Daniel, and the reminder of how destructive the power of that hate is and how important it is to stand in the face of it. I would next like to invite Louai El Sharif, a passionate linguist from United Arab Emirates and a proud supporter of the Abraham Accords. Thank you so much for being with us here today. The stage is yours.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much. So I just want to say that, first of all, I'm so honored to be here with you. And when we speak about anti-Semitism, I love to be very direct and honest in getting into the real roots of this anti-Semitism. I was raised a religious Muslim, and we were taught in school to hate Jews and to hate Christians because we have religious texts that order us to do so. I was very believing in these kind of teachings. So it was the way it was, and the media also played a role in this kind of thing. The Egyptian TV series, the Egyptian movies, the movies in the Arab world depicted Jews as people who have fangs, people who are evil. But the curricula really played a great role. I was influenced by these kind of teachings until 2010, 14 years ago. I'm a 14-year-old recovered anti-Semite. 2010, I traveled to France. I studied with a French family. I did something called a homestay program, and that family happened to be Jewish. And I had the inner battle between determining which is right and which is wrong. We have religious texts that direct us to hate Jews and to hate Christians, especially Jews. And the reality is that Jews are fine. Jews are good people. And this is why I always say to my friends that I would never ask you to abandon Islam, but I would ask you to abandon hate that radical Islam preaches, as Eli Kohanim said. So I decided to be a different person. I am now 14-year-old tolerant Muslim, I would call myself, that knows Islam very well and knows the root causes of this hate that I proudly expunged when I was 27 in 2010. And I'm helping other people to expunge this hate as well by showing the commonalities between Islam and Judaism, by showing the commonalities between Muslims and Jews, by telling people how Israel is 3,000 years old, 75 years young, and that the Jewish people belong to this region. What really matters is that we all abandon hate. If you have a text that talked about Jews in the 7th century, you cannot just say it's applicable to all Jews today in the 21st century. That's preposterous, and that's crazy and total madness. I remember when I had this encounter with these texts after living with while living with a French family. It was hard. I either had to succumb to the herd or to stand out and say, this is wrong. Hate consumes you. Hate really consumes you. And only the courageous people would be able to shout, scream at the face of these texts and say, you are wrong, you are destroying my life. You are texts that will make me a bad or a worse person. Only the courageous would do this. And I'm so happy and honored to be one of those who expunged these kind of teachings and got them out of my chest 14 years ago. What I'm doing now on social media is helping my fellow Muslims, because I care about my fellow Muslims, to fall into the trap of extremism, fundamentalism, radicalism, and I really want to help Muslims and Jews to come along, fight their own battle together, the battle of peace, the battle of a prosperous Middle East where Muslims and Jews, Arabs and Israelis can build it together. Thank you so much.
You mentioned one or two very important things. We like to talk about education as a means of solving the problem and getting us closer. And you showed us a side of education that could fuel that hate, and the importance of the courage to stand and ask the questions and ask if it's really what we want to study. So I think that's a very, very important takeaway, the other side of education. So thank you very, very much for that. Next to join us is Professor Menaz Afridi, Director of the Holocaust, Genocide, and Interfaith Education Center at Manhattan College, and also Executive Director of Tazkiyah Peace Partners. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Menaz.
Thank you so much. It's such a great honor to be here. You know, my journey, I think some of you know the work I do, but I am the only Muslim to head a Holocaust center in the United States, perhaps globally. And it's been sort of my mission to combat anti-Semitism, but also combat Islamophobia. So I am a scholar of both Holocaust and Islam. So I wear very interesting hats all the time. And I'm an activist in New York, especially in Riverdale and the Bronx, where I live. And I have not only experienced anti-Semitism personally, but also Islamophobia. So I can't say how important this is. I've stood by my Jewish brothers and sisters for many years, and I continue to do that even during this climate. I wanted to say that one of the things that I think we keep forgetting as Muslims and Jews is how our historical Jewish-Muslim cooperation has been so important, how we were all interested and committed to science, to literature, to philosophy, how we built so much in the Renaissance time between the 9th and the 12th century. I also want to say how it's not an ideal history, but at the same time, it's important to note that that history did exist indeed, and Jews and Muslims were in a vacuum. I live here in the United States, where anti-Semitism has been on the rise for the last decade. October 7th is nothing new in terms of the rise of anti-Semitism. It's a trauma that the Jewish community is feeling and feeling very vulnerable, and that is why I'm here to support you. I think that looking at the terrain of the United States is really important in understanding what's happening with younger kids. I spent a lot of time recently at high schools, both Jewish and Muslim high schools, talking to young children about how to navigate their spaces. I think that is the important message in terms of peace, that we need to take care of our future, and our future are basically our children. And Muslim peace is never merely the absence of war or organized violence. To me, it is also the presence of justice and the creation of conditions in which humans can realize their full potential. Human beings' nature is inclined to peace, and the violence comes because we were educated, like the former speaker said, not because of our nature. Peace cannot be kept by force, as Islam shows us, and can only be achieved by understanding. Peace is not absence of conflict. It is ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. I have to end shortly because I have to be somewhere, but I'm really honored to be here. And I just want to say that my center, the Holocaust, Genocide, and Interfaith Education Center, is actually on a Catholic campus. And through interfaith education, we have actually built alliances through the work of genocide and healing. And I think that is really important when we're thinking about identifying as Muslim, as Jewish, as Christian, as Buddhist, as Hindu, as atheist, as secular, because we need to move forward in terms of the future and stop paralyzing ourselves because of hate. So I thank you very much, and I commend Combat Anti-Semitism movement and all my colleagues here. Thank you.
Thank you, Manaz. And I mean, just by your hats being so diverse, and I'm sure to some people even controversial, you've probably experienced this, and reminding us, just like Valentina did, the importance of working together, the historical things that we did together in culture and in science, and going back to striving to that future. So thank you very much for that reminder. Next to join us in this rally is Sheikh Musa Drame, president of Muslim Israel Dialogue. Sheikh, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My fellow speakers and the host, I am extremely honored to be here. This is a topic that is of very, very, very important to me and my wife for the past 20 years. Let me begin by acknowledging the fact anti-orders is pure ignorance, whether they're anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, or xenophobic, or you name it. Anti-orders is pure ignorance. And all the speakers eloquently spoke about their acquired understanding of orders, enlighten their hearts not to be hateful, to know the orders' positions and orders' realities. So on this forum, which is an absolute necessity, I am highly encouraging all of you to enlighten the hearts of others, especially the Muslim world. Anti-Semitism is nothing more than ignorance. In the Muslim world, the Jewish people are not known. And this is true to all Muslim countries. And for the past several years, I have been working closely with the Israeli diplomats and Jewish organizations in New York City. And my message has always been, you must provide a better education for who you are to the Muslim world. Muslims do not know Israel, and Muslims do not know the Jewish people. What they know is what shows on October 7th. And I believe that anyone who saw what happened on October 7th immediately after the worst terrorism on the Jewish people in the Holy Land, people were not sending their condolences or condemning Hamas, but they were rallying in support of Hamas. That is a sign that we must take heed. And it is an opportunity that we can build on. For the past 20 years, we have built one of the strongest and the closest relationship between Muslims and Jews in New York. We still have a long way to go. We got a lot of miles and to go, but we have done a wonderful, wonderful job. Now let me briefly tell you, what happened in recent years. The last 2 worst fire tragedies in New York City, I was the official coordinator for all of them. And these fire tragedies, all victims were Muslims. And in all the tragedies, the first groups on the scene were Jewish groups. The most generous donors for these victims were Jewish people. The last tragedy that took 17 lives, all of them African, all of them Muslims, after donating over $1 million from the Jewish community, after volunteering to feed and guide and provide services, a couple of days later, Rabbi Kaplan of JCRC called me and said, Musa, I know we have done the best we can, but there can always be more, to be done as friends. Is there anything that we can do, from the Jewish community? I said to Rabbi Kaplan, Rabbi, you have done it all. You guys came together, you were the force, you fed, you gave us the solidarity that really typifies the diversity of New York. Everything is done. He said, no, just check, because we just want to make sure that everything that your community needs is there. I said to Rabbi, let me find out from the families if there's anything that they need. So I reached out to the families, and some of them told me that they have decided to bury their loved ones in the Gambia. So I reached out to Rabbi Kaplan. I said, well, some of them decided to bury their loved ones in the Gambia. And I
Sheikh
think
Musa, we only have a minute or two to go, so if you,
yeah. So
we only have a
Rabbi
little.
Kaplan said, "How much do you think we'll do it?" I said, "I don't know, maybe 20,000 or whatever." He said, "I don't want to promise you, but let me work on it." A couple of hours later, he called me and said, "We have $25,000 for them to bury their loved ones." That is the symbol of togetherness. That is the relationship that we built. Now, last but not least, 8 years ago, my wife and I said the relationship between Muslims and Jews have been built. Now, let's introduce the state of Israel to the Muslim world. And we launched Muslims-Israel Dialogue. And we've been holding summits to making sure that the Muslim world, which has 57 nations, among them 22 Arab League nations, should no longer waste a single minute fighting one Jewish nation that their own book talk differently than they're acting. And we have been very brave, we have been very public, and we have been very focal in making sure that Israel is an asset to the Muslim world, not liability. And October 7 actually proved us right. And October 7 is a game changer. And I hope that all of us will take advantage of it so that we will never ever go back to October 6th. Thank you for having me, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Sheikh Musa, first of all, for all the activity, very, very inspiring activity, but also for pointing out that a meeting between two cultures comes from people meeting people and from the most very simple, basic forms of relationship. And Azra spoke about that as well. So something to keep in mind in our everyday before we talk about education or huge activities. It's just people meeting people. So next to join us is Rahil Raza. Rahil is on the steering committee of the Council of Muslims Against Anti-Semitism. Rahil, it's so great to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for coming. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I feel privileged to be among great minds with expertise on the dreaded four-letter word hate. And as it has been established by all our speakers, we know that hate exists against all communities and is never acceptable. And we have to do everything we can to eliminate hate from the hearts and minds of the people around us. But today I want to focus on the hate that has been vented against the Jewish community and the hate that emanates from a primary source, which is anti-Semitism. We all know that anti-Semitism is a global virus, and the Jewish people have been subject to it for hundreds, if not more, thousands of years. They were a displaced community who in 1948 formed a homeland. But it was not just Israel that was formed. There were 12 other countries after the defeat of the Ottomans. And that does not seem to matter to the world because the angst and the hate is directed only and only towards Israel and the Jewish people and no other country that was formed under similar circumstances. So that's something to think about. Let's fast forward to today. Yes, there is anti-Semitism in the world. There's no denying the fact, but let's get to the source of the problem. Detailed analysis of the October 7th tragic events is emerging through the heart-rending stories of rape, torture, and abuse, but there is still a deafening silence from people and organizations who should have been the first ones to condemn it, including women's groups. In Canada, unfortunately, we have seen this hate transform into street violence against Jewish students, the Jewish community, and mostly against Jewish-owned businesses, directly under the eyes of our law enforcement people who just this week confessed that they don't know how to deal with the crisis and they don't have the training to do so. So we at the Council of Muslims Against Anti-Semitism and our team are trying to put out fires and reach out in solidarity to our Jewish brothers and sisters. But the big question is, where is all this hate emanating from? And allow me to address the elephant in the room and trace it to its source, to the head of the monster whose footprints are all over the Al-Quds Day Hate Fest, the BDS movement, the Israel Apartheid Week. All of these are forms of institutionalized hatred, and you just have to connect the dots to see that the October 7th horrendous massacre of innocent Israeli civilians was not a standalone event. It was a very well-planned attack that had been in the making for years. And the master of this nefarious agenda are the mullahs of Iran, who are using the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas to carry out their plans. Agents of the IRGC are busy in the Western world to finance pro-Hamas rallies and promote the hate. Let me be clear. There is no problem with Palestinians looking for a democratic solution to push their cause, but not through Hamas, who is a certified terrorist entity. And why are we allowing Iran to implement their agenda in our countries? If we want to eliminate hate, the first thing we have to do is put pressure on our governments to declare the IRGC a terrorist entity and stop Iran from their propaganda and evil designs in the Western world. Secondly, we must reach out to each other in solidarity and compassion, as we are doing here today. Thirdly, our mandate in our organization are the 3 E's: expose the problem, educate the masses, and empower people for change from within. I will end by saying that we will never allow anti-Semitism to be normalized, which is what our enemies are trying to do. So thank you all so much for being here. It's such a pleasure and blessing to be in your company.
Thank you for your very, very empowering words, especially as a woman. You mentioned the shocking silence of women organizations, something we really need to be an alert on. And also for the first time today, you spoke about the national level and the power in pressuring the government. So very important things to keep in mind with this fight. Thank you so much. Our next guest today is Awais Aslam, founder of the Indian Pluralism Foundation. Aslam, welcome so much. Great to have you here.
First of all, I would like to express our solidarity on behalf of the Muslims living in India and our organization, the Indian Pluralism Foundation. And we stand with all our Jewish brothers and sisters all across the world. The abhorrent acts which took place on the 7th of October, it resonates well with us because as Indians, we remember on 26/11, many years ago, we Indians also faced a similar terrorist attack. And the Jewish community of Mumbai, they were massacred as well in the Chabad. So these anti-Semitic attacks are strongly condemned, and we as citizens of this world must continue to point out anti-Semitism wherever it takes place. In the recent past, we have witnessed these pro-Palestinian rallies, so-called pro-Palestinian rallies that are taking place all across the world. These rallies took place in India too, in many parts of our country, in many parts of the subcontinent. But the disturbing trend that we noticed during these rallies was they were not close to being pro-Palestinian. Most of these rallies were focusing on demonizing and delegitimizing Israelis and Jews. So, and one of the most disturbing aspects of these rallies were that we found youngsters, we found teenagers who are participating in these rallies. And these teenagers have been brainwashed. Let us make no mistake, but we are facing 2 wars right now. The first war that we are facing is on the battlefield against Hamas. And the second war that we are facing is a propaganda war, which Hamas and its coterie, its supporters, which are waging all across the world, on the social media, on college campuses, on universities, on office floors, factory floors, everywhere. We are witnessing youngsters who are becoming radicalized day by day. We are seeing TikTok videos that are being made in which most of the American citizens are being brainwashed into believing what TikTok is spreading out. And most of these are Hamas promoted. Moreover, what Raheel ma'am has just elucidated very clearly that Iran is spreading its propaganda and spreading this war through its proxies, Hezbollah and the Houthi Yemens, as well as its proxies in Syria as well. These proxies are in for the long war. They believe in the same ideology as what we are facing in India. We are facing in India as our enemies want to destroy us by bleeding us to 1,000 cuts. Similarly, the same policy and the same ideology is being employed against Israel as well. So we must continue to educate our youngsters in fighting against this nefarious ideology which seeks to divide people, divide Muslims and Jews. And we shall stand up together and continue to work together as brothers and sisters. But not only brothers and sisters, but we are cousins. We should continue to promote peace and harmony and promote salomness and shalamness. I want to thank Combat Antisemitism for their wonderful initiative. And we continue to pray, especially for this wonderful little baby child who I continue to pray every day in my namaz, Kifr, baby Kifr. And I hope that inshallah ta'ala, inshallah, Bizrat Hashim, he returns back with his family and all the hostages that are being held. May God bless all of you and may God be with all of us. Thank you very much. Salaam alaikum, shalom aleichem.
Thank you. Salam alaikum. And of course, we all pray for the return of the hostages. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Next to join us is Rabbi Eric Greenberg, National Director of Partnership and Multi-Faith Outreach at the Focus Project. Welcome, Rabbi. Thank you so much for coming today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thanks first to Sasha, Natalie, the whole CAM team, my fellow speakers, my friends and colleagues, Sheikh Musa and Dr. Afridi. This is just a wonderful group to be with and to be inspired by. In thinking about speaking with you all today, I wanted to focus on a situation that I thought is relevant and hopefully will resonate with all of you. It starts with the 2001 ISIS terrorist attack on America. Anti-Islam sentiment skyrocketed in the United States. In New York City, emotions were raw as citizens mourned the death of more than 3,000 people who died at the World Trade Center. 8 years later, a proposal was quietly circulating to build a Muslim community center and a mosque near the old World Trade Center. At the time, I was the director of interfaith affairs at the Anti-Defamation League. I immediately recognized that this local proposal, which nobody knew about, would become a major public controversy. So I started talking to my friends in the interfaith world and community leaders to get their views about it. Within weeks, as predicted, this proposal became a national controversy, and it pitted anti-Muslim hardliners opposed to the project against liberals defending the plan. Indeed, the nasty rhetoric was getting out of hand, including unhelpful statements by several prominent Jewish leaders. The issue was preventing any serious, productive dialogue between Muslims and Jews, which, as you may know, was already pretty much non-existent. As a result of the backlash, I began to think about ways that the American Muslim community can be helped by our Jewish organization. So I designed a program to help the Muslim communities in America overcome the clear prejudice they were facing in trying to build or expand their mosques around the country. My idea led to the creation of the project I named the Interfaith Coalition on Mosques, or ICOM. I assembled a group of noted national faith leaders, Catholics, Protestants, and Jews to serve on our board, and ICOM's mission would be to investigate the Muslim complaints against these local and state governments who are trying to block their ability to build or expand their mosques. We would advocate on their behalf, including filing amicus briefs in state and federal court when necessary. So I'm just going to read a little bit of the mission statement of ICOM. The Interfaith Coalition on Mosques, comprised of individuals and organizations from different faith traditions, provides support and stands with Muslims when their rights are being violated. ICOM's charter members included some of the nation's leading religious leaders. From Florida to California, ugly rhetoric has replaced civil dialogue at local government planning meetings and community debates over proposals by Muslim citizens to exercise the rights guaranteed to everyone in the United States. In Tennessee at that time, there were plans for 3 new Islamic centers, which provoked hateful reactions from the opponents, including vandalism against a mosque. In Sheboygan, Wisconsin, some Christian ministers loudly opposed a Muslim group seeking to build a mosque in a former health food store owned by a Muslim doctor. In California, members of a local Tea Party took dogs and picket signs to Friday prayers against these Muslim worshipers trying to expand their mosque in a nearby lot. So mosque opponents were misrepresenting the Quran, and of course, we all know, claiming that all American Muslims secretly want to impose Sharia law in the United States. The level of hostility, fear-mongering, and hate speech was unacceptable and un-American. We believe at ICOM that the America's democratic values is to ensure that Muslims can exercise the same religious freedom enjoyed by everyone in America. I'd like to report that our efforts were successful. We did help Muslim communities succeed to build around the country. But there was also a telling reality. A few months after we started, one of the nation's most prominent Protestant leaders called me privately and said he had to resign. He had to resign from our project because his faith group would not accept him being part of an effort to assist Muslims. But on the whole, we succeeded. And Muslims were able to build their mosque, and we were able to show the Muslim community that Jews and other faith leaders of goodwill were willing to stand with them. I tell this story because I believe we are now in such a time. We need to remember that in these dark times, we can and must step up and create ways to work together. We must take this time now to quietly brainstorm on initiatives similar to ICOM. We must strive to keep lines of communication open and support each other against the spreading hate and bigotry from different sectors of our society. Despite the overwhelming feelings...
We are running to our final minute. Thanks.
Great. Despite the overwhelming feelings we are all experiencing, like ICOM, we will join together and we will battle this violence and we'll battle this hate. So let's do this. And to quote a great captain of the Starship Enterprise, a ship filled with all ethnicities and religions, make it so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for your extremely brave project, which I'm sure we're all very happy to hear had success, but also reminds us of the intricacies of faith and interfaith and the power that an interfaith fight for a faith that's not our own can have, something that's extremely inspiring and powerful. So thank you very much for that. Next to join us is Ahmed Al-Mansouri, founder of the Crossroads of Civilizations Museum and a dear friend of the Combat Anti-Semitism movement. Ahmed Al-Mansouri, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for being with us here today. Please.
It's a pleasure to see you too, and I'm very honored to be invited by CAM to have me speak and be in such a beautiful panel with experts. I'm not an expert, I'm a practitioner, and I will speak from my heart. And as all of you know me, I'm Muslim, an Arab Muslim. I'm devoted Sunni Muslim, and I follow the teaching of the Quran, the Hadith, and we learn a lot from the stories of Bani Israel, from Israeliyat. And there was nothing in my teaching, that negates that talks about the golden age that we had before. But before talking more about faith and multi-faith and kinship, I want to say my personal experience when I was studying in one of the countries, without mentioning the name. I was studying there was a big major war in the Middle East. During also some terrorist activities in that country happened there. We were targeted. And that's why, my heart breaks when I see the rise of the anti-Semitism that's happening in the West at all levels, because I've been there. And I was so lucky that I had an advisor. Her name is Betty Nobat. And she was a great lady. She's a Jewish. And she was my advisor. And she did not allow anyone to touch any Muslim or any Arab, or to be targeted by anybody. We were really facing racism in so many ways. But, with her protection, legally and illegally, but we were our back was very strong, as we say in Arabic. So she was making sure that no one touched us, no one's there with us. We had our place of prayer was broken. We had when we pray in somewhere else, people come and laugh at us. We had many stories there. So I really feel what the Jewish communities what they are going through in the West, and it's very dangerous when people generalize. I'm glad that the dear Rabbi and also Sheikh Musa, they talked about the examples in New York. I remember this is one of the great examples that, the Jewish community, and this message is for my Muslim and Arab brothers. I want them to really understand, at the time we had hard time in the United States, in other different countries in the West, the Jewish communities, they were the ones supporting us. They were the one who were standing next to us, supporting our faith because they are sincere. They understand that we have the same, we share the same roots of the faith. We share the same faith. The father of our faith is Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, and we have lots of commonalities. So in so many ways, when racism was rising against us, we were protected by the Jewish people. And I think it's the time for all of us to really not to generalize, not to really follow, propagandas from the media, and also not to follow the extremists, from both sides. When I talk about extremism, I love religious people from all religions. I love to be with priests, with rabbis, with imams, but I do not like to be with extremists from any religion. And unfortunately, I'm very surprised by people from both nations. They are so smart, they are educated, and the world population, and yet they are infected and influenced by extremist doctrines. So it's a time for us to really get out of that and really not be ungrateful. And also, when people are feeling they're facing prejudice, anti-Semitism, or facing xenophobia, or whatever reason, or maybe whatever reason or misunderstanding, we should not stand, and let's just keep watching there. We have to make sure that, others have to be protected. Because I personally, and my different students when we were there studying, we were really well protected by the Jewish people. And the level of respect that we have seen beyond what people know. Unfortunately, many people don't understand, how deep is our roots in terms of kinship and religion. But I think we should really move forward and not allow, not be part of this propaganda and politicize everything. And people in the West should really, we should not allow, this anti-Semitism to rise there, especially in the West, which is very surprising. We have to make any effort to stop that one and have solidarity with our Jewish friends, not to face such racism, because that's against our religion. We say in the Quran, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. And also, we are not supposed to, generalize and be part of this unjust and tyranny. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed Al-Mansouri. It's amazing how for you and for many of the people in this rally and in the world, it comes down to one event, to a specific time, to help, to support they got from a person or a community. Before we talk about national strategies and rallies, it really is that memory, and that's something to take back to our communities, to try to see how we can get the people together, to know one another, to Jews and the Muslims, to just get to know one another before we talk about anything much greater than that. It really comes down to human beings. Thank you so much. Our next guest here is Dan Khan, U.S. Army veteran and Mala's community manager. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Hi, how's it going? I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, and thank you, Combat Antisemitism, for hosting this much-needed event. I'm very excited to spread our message of diversity and inclusion and combating hate. MALA is short for the Muslim American Leadership Alliance. At MALA, we believe in the power of education to break down barriers of ignorance and misconceptions. We are actively engaged in the educational initiatives that aim to raise awareness about the history and impact of anti-Semitism. Through workshops, seminars, and cultural exchange events, we strive to dispel stereotypes, fostering an environment where knowledge and understanding can flourish. Interfaith dialogue is another cornerstone of our efforts. We firmly believe that by fostering conversations between different religious communities, particularly between Muslims and Jewish people, we can build bridges of understanding and forge bonds of friendship. Through dialogue, we can find common ground, dispelling myths, and creating a foundation of mutual respect. Anti-Semitism is a virus that has been around for many years. It never goes away, but it finds unique opportunities to spring back up and to grow. The October 7th attacks were a horrendous example of what people who truly hold anti-Semitism close are capable of. I've been surprised by the world's response to those attacks. While I was horrified and appalled learning what was done to the innocent people, I was equally surprised by how the news media and social media platforms quickly shifted the narrative. Mala is not afraid to say that we believe in Israel's right to exist. We are not afraid to show support for the innocent people affected by the attacks. I do not think it's enough to condemn anti-Semitism. At the many interfaith events I go to, I always say that Mala condemns anti-Semitism in all forms. But I think we need to be doing more. We need to be actively combating anti-Semitism, like the name of this conference. We need to be out there fighting viciously to stop bigotry, not passively showing support through empty gestures. What does this look like? It doesn't mean assaulting people, breaking the law, or putting ourselves or anyone else in danger. Viciously fighting anti-Semitism takes many forms. A little bit more about me. My partner is Jewish. We've been together for several years, and I've gone to countless Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur dinners, learning about the struggles of Jewish people. We have 2 cats, Latka and Kofta. So fighting anti-Semitism is personal to me. Things that I do are I call out friends and loved ones who are perpetuating myths and lies. This takes form online and in person. When I see a person posting false information online, I have a conversation with them. I ask them questions. I see why they posted what they did. And I've been able to get them to remove their posts and sometimes even change their thoughts. In person, I listen to what people have to say. And when they say something that I find hateful or ignorant, I'm not afraid to ask them why they think that way and what evidence they have to support their beliefs. And I steer the conversation to a place of understanding and respect. The last thing on my list is voting. We need to vote and support politicians that acknowledge the existing and rising hate and are not afraid to do something about it. I hope that this rise in hate is dealt with and that we can live harmoniously. But I know it's not going to be easy. We have to stick together, continue to support each other, and actively, viciously fight anti-Semitism. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I know my part is short, and I hope it was very impactful for everybody. Know that the Jewish community will always have mullahs and my personal support.
First of all, Dan, thank you for your service. Where are you coming from today? Where are you coming from? I see it's light and afternoon or maybe even morning, if I have a good guess.
I live in Brooklyn, New York.
There we go. We have all around the globe representatives here today. Your Mala work is beyond impactful, and I think we were all extremely shocked and surprised by that change of narrative on that day, something we're still dealing with till this very, very day. Our next very special guest is Soraya Dean, founder of the Muslim Women Speakers Movement and co-founder of Peace Moms, promoting Christian-Muslim dialogue. She's also a board member of the American Muslim and Multi-Faith Women's Empowerment Council, and recently worked with CAM to host a delegation of Israeli Muslim Bedouin family members who were visiting Los Angeles to raise awareness of the plight of their father and brother, Farhan El-Qadi, who was kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th. Thank you so much for joining us here today. So great to see you.
Thank you. I'm Israel Kai. Today, the Palestinian cause has become an excuse for anti-Semitism. The anti-Semitism that was confined, I might say, mostly to individuals has now become national. I remember 2 weeks after October 7th, I took my rabbi friend to my local mosque. And I was sitting there listening to the Friday sermon. And the Imam goes on about how important the Palestinian cause is. And he inserts into that how we cannot trust the Jews, how during the time of the Prophet, Jews were unreliable and very negative things. And I was embarrassed. And I'm always telling my Muslim friends, we have 57 Muslim countries, and we grudge 8,550 square miles for the Jews. Where is our heart in this issue? So after the Jummah sermon, I go down, I meet the head of the owner of the mosque, and I confront him. And I ask the rabbi, tell the so-and-so the name, I don't want to mention, I'll get into deeper trouble. I'm already in so much trouble and hot water. I said to her, tell her please what you felt when this sermon was being given and the facts that was expressed in the sermon. And she told how surprised she was and how hurt she was. And then I asked the gentleman, why is it that you can't get your imams to deliver a different message? And he said, oh, I can't do that. People will be angry. So there's a vicious cycle of nobody taking ownership for this particular level of anti-Semitism that is happening in not only in Middle East, but in the United States of America. And I live in Los Angeles, and this happened in Los Angeles. And it saddens me for many reasons. One is that so glaringly the Holocaust is in our view, and then we engage in anti-Semitism. And as Rabbi Sachs would say, the victim can't cure the hate. It has to be others. So I take this particular mandate very seriously. And today I want to talk about what is happening, which I told you already, and what we are seeing happening. And two things in this that really is egregious and that really troubles me deep in my heart. And in the field of community organizing, we talk about the concept of criticality, where something happens and then you're so aggrieved, you can't stay quiet, you want to do something about it. And then you do something with the hope, not in despair. So secondly, I want to talk about the Jewish women, my Jewish sisters. They were abducted, they were raped, they were tortured, they were butchered, and they were massacred and mutilated. And I think the UN Women failed us terribly. And just as much as grassroots activists like us work on the ground, what about what needs to change on the top? And I found out a lady by the name of Sima Bahuz, a Jordanian, is the executive director at the United Nations Women. And we know Resolution 1325 is very clear. When women are raped and abused in times of combat, we have to raise our voices. And that didn't happen. So this is a call for us to gear our work and our efforts to call out those in the top who have not spoken. And as you quite rightly said, I met the Bedouins. And this is another egregious thing that's happening, and the Muslims are not recognizing the attack by Hamas on fellow Muslims. And I was in Israel. My friend Anila Ali, friend and colleague, I sit on her advisory board. She organized a delegation, and we had the privilege and the honor to meet the Bedouin community. Over 200,000, I'm told, in Israel. And there was a man we met whose wife, I think she was 35 years old, Al-Talakat, mother of 9. She was wearing a hijab. And the husband was telling us how he begged Hamas on October 7th to spare her life. But they riddled 40 bullets into her fragile body while her infant child was seated in the back of the car. And this level of inhumanity and barbarity is satanic. And I really can't believe how the Israeli government and the Jewish people had to talk peace, had to deal with a new possibility with a terrorist organization whose ethos is nothing but the destruction of Israel. And I think we Muslims have a special duty to speak about that and to speak out. And lastly, what do we think we need to do? I think this is a time. I stand firmly as a Muslim. I think I would say even in radical compassion of the Palestinians, especially mothers, women, children, men, where Hamas has siphoned millions of dollars of our American taxpayer money included. We are one of the top donors for Gaza, not to forget Germans, Europeans, and all of that. And while their leaders have siphoned that money, living in luxury, not built one bomb shelter for the women and children. And I stand with those women who are today lost families. But I also call on all of us, particularly the Jewish people. This is a time for you to embody competing virtues, kindness, collaboration, compassion, an ability to negotiate better. They need us. because I think the message of the divine is very clear. To whom much is given, much is expected. So with those words, I like to conclude by saying we have a huge problem, but we cannot go any further, any lower, any east, west, north, south. We have hit a terrible wall. And this is a time for renewal. And we Muslims will stand strong and tall with the Jewish people, whom I have met many, many times. My friends are Jewish. My partners are Jewish. And I want to take that message of solidarity to the Muslim community and change hearts and minds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Soraya. And I think you said one thing about not being afraid to get in trouble in order to call out the elephant in the room. Something that sometimes a lot of us need to remind ourselves, whatever age or congregation we're a part of. And that's a big part of that voice. So thank you so much for reminding us that. Our next guest is Haras Rafiq, Director of Muslims Against Antisemitism, Secure Canada and American Center Countering Extremism. Thank you so much, Haras, for being with us here today. It is a pleasure and an honor to have you. The stage is yours.
First of all, thank you to Combat Antisemitism for organizing this very important event. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here amongst some old friends and to make new friends. Going near the end, it's kind of, one sits there thinking, okay, what is it that I can add to the discussion today that's not already been said? And I thought that, okay, well, I want to look at the problem, and I think we've all identified the problem to a partial extent. And I want to look at the problem because without coming to solutions, we actually need to understand what the problem is and how big it is. And then talk about some things that we can do collectively as a civil society, encouraging our politicians, and things that we can do ourselves as well. So I'm going to talk about the problem from a Western perspective, from the UK, Europe, and North America. And one of the things that I thought about on October the 7th was, why now? Why is it that Hamas has actually carried out these attacks now? And what do they hope to achieve? They've kind of bet the kitchen sink, as we say, on one program of one terrorist attack on Israel. Did they not think that Israel would respond? Did they not think that Israel would respond in the way that Israel has responded? What is it that they were trying to do, and what is it that they have achieved? Well, I can't answer the first question, but I want to look at what is it that they've actually achieved. And I want to talk about the triple threat. And this is a phrase that we coined, three of us sitting in an office when I was CEO of Quilliam Foundation about 7 or 8 years ago. The triple threat that to our liberal secular democracies in the West, and how anti-Semitism is the fuel. One of the things that they've been able to achieve is to unite Muslims from different sects, people who are Islamist, and by the way, Islamism is not a made-up word. It's a word that the Muslim Brotherhood used to differentiate themselves from other Muslims at the time at their inception, Islamiyun. But they've managed to unite Islamists, Sufis, Deobandis, Wahhabis, Salafis, people in Shia, people of different sectarian beliefs who for 1400 years have been opposed to each other and often excommunicating each other. But they've managed to bring these people together on a common platform. The other thing they've been able to do, and when we talk about these marches that we're seeing in the United Kingdom, we're seeing them in North America and in Europe, we focus, rightly so, on my fellow co-religionists, Muslims that are on the marches and are being anti-Semitic. But let's not forget that there are a lot of people from what we call the regressive left who are actually part of the Red-Green Alliance. So they've actually been able to bring together different Muslims from different sects, different beliefs, and the regressive or the far left. But the third thing we've seen is that the actual far right, the actual fascists, certainly in the United Kingdom, people like Nick Griffin, are also working with them. So we have the far right, we have the Islamist, we have theocrats, we have people who are Muslim, and we have the far left, who are actually working together and are a threat to our liberal secular democracy, with anti-Semitism being the fuel, the oxygen that is bringing them together. And one of the things that we certainly analysed, and we started analysing here in the United Kingdom, because I'm sitting on a number of task forces here at the moment for the government, we analyzed that this is not just a threat to the Jewish community, this is a threat to the British community and to the world and worldwide, because this phenomenon we saw before ISIS declared the Islamic State, because a lot of people that went to join ISIS had previously been on anti-British, anti-American marches for groups like the band that prescribed al-Muhajirun. So one of the things that we're bracing ourselves for when we see 9-year-old children giving speeches, missing school and giving speeches at these marches and these protests, some of them Muslim, some of them not Muslim. When we see these people, these kids, we are very concerned about what's coming next. Because whatever happens in the Middle East, the fighting will stop. Inshallah, as we say, God willing, the fighting will stop. And even if there was a magic wand tomorrow and there was peace in the region and all the Gazans accepted, got rid of Hamas and accepted that Israel needed to be safe and they lived peacefully with Israel, the people in the Western world and around the world that are on these marches, that are being anti-Semitic, that are the far right, the far left, and people of my religion, Islam, will not be happy. Because they're already angry, and we're worried that the radicalization process to terrorism is going to increase, and we are bracing ourselves for terrorist incidents here in the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, and Europe. So what is it that we should do? Well, first of all, we should learn the lessons from what we saw in the past, sort of just post 9/11 and post 7/7 here in the United Kingdom and other terrorist attacks around the world. We need to actually work top down and bottom up. Governments, agencies, police force actually have to take out the charismatic recruiters who are using social media, because social media in itself doesn't radicalize anybody. Nobody goes online to buy a pair of shoes or buy a handbag or something, and whoops, suddenly they're an extremist or a terrorist. They have to find people, somebody has to find them. And there are charismatic recruiters on steroids. We had Abu Hamza, we had Omar Bakri, we had all of these people in the past. They were operating in mosques, they were operating in community centers. Now these people are recruiting, and these charismatic recruiters are online. So that's something for the governments and for our agencies and the police, etc., to do. But what is it that we in civil society should do? Well, people have talked about education. I put it to you that education on its own is not enough, and it will not work. People have started adopting, based on anti-Semitism, what they consider to be an irrefutable truth, and that is that Jews are the root of all evil. And Israel is the bastion, or the fort, if you like, that is defending the Jewish people. We're not going to beat that, we're not going to defeat that by education alone. We have to focus on the ideological, the intellectual, the social, emotional, and spiritual narratives that are being constructed by these people, and they haven't just happened now, they've been happening for decades. We, all of us here, myself included, and governments, we did not inoculate our civil societies effectively against anti-Semitism. The far left, the far right, and people who are Muslim. We need to deconstruct the narratives. We need to actually go out there with alternative narratives, with alternative truths, based on the truth that we consider is the reality and the things that have brought us all here. That is something that we need to start doing now, because the day after tomorrow, as it were, the day after the war in the Middle East stops, the hard work will begin. And to stay within my time, I just want to and I was thinking, I may have said this before, but something that stuck with me as to why I'm involved in this work and why I'm personally involved in this area. And I'll restate, I may have said it before, but I think it's important. Something that the fourth Caliph of Islam, from the Sunni traditions, and from the Shia traditions, the person they believed should have been the first Caliph was Sayyidina Ali, the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who was also the cousin of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And he said that we are all brothers and sisters in faith. And if not, at the very least, we are partners in humanity. And it's that humanity that we as a civil society have lost. And it's that hatred, that anger that people are expressing now on the streets, online and everywhere. And it's up to us as civil society to come up with alternative narratives. Thank you, Combat Anti-Semitism, for inviting me and for hosting this very important virtual rally.
Thank you, Haras. Indeed, a triple threat, and very, very important. Thank you for bringing us back to the pragmatic, to the practical level, and talking about targeting the recruiters and not just talking about education in general, rather than fighting the ideology on emotional, on other kinds of levels. So these are things that every single one of us here in this rally can take back home and really have to be minded to. So thank you very, very much for that. Next to join us is Ahmad Unasir, President and Missionary in charge of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community of Panama, all the way from Panama. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. I know that we have very little time left. The speech that I had prepared for this, it will go way over 10 minutes. So I will just read out just a statement from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. The statement is delivered by the fifth Caliph of the Prophet Messiah, Islam, the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, regarding the October 7 attack that happened on the innocents. He states that over the past few days, hundreds of Israelis and Palestinians, including women, children, and the elderly, have been killed or injured as a result of senseless violence and bloodshed. The killing or harming of innocent civilians is a direct violation of the teachings of the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, who taught that even in a state of warfare, no women, children, or elders should be targeted or harmed in any way, nor should any religious leader or place of worship be attacked. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community extends its deepest sympathies and prayers to all those who have been left bereaved or affected in any way. Our hearts go out to them all. We pray and urge for an immediate end to hostilities and for peace to prevail so that no more lives are lost. For that, it is necessary that the channels of communication between relevant parties and nations remain open. Until a ceasefire occurs, any military action taken must ensure that civilians do not come to any harm. Furthermore, Muslim countries within the region should unite in an effort to establish peace and to ensure that the rights of those innocent Palestinian people who have no link with extremists are protected. We urge the United States and other influential nations to abstain from any actions or statements that may further inflame the volatile situation. Instead, alongside the relevant international organizations, they should make very possible effort to urgently de-escalate the conflict and secure peace as soon as possible. Justice and equity are paramount importance in achieving lasting and sustainable peace. Thus, all the major powers must focus on establishing long-term and sustainable peace based upon the principles of fairness and true justice. So this is the official statement that was released. We see that just a little bit, I will just mention a little bit from my speech that I have prepared, that the Holy Quran, whenever it talks about the means of establishing peace, it talks about justice, that without justice, peace cannot be established. So even if one has to, if one has to, if a person from your own family, the Prophet of Islam said, even if my daughter Fatima would have robbed somebody or have done something wrong, then she would also be punished accordingly, according to the crime that has been committed. So if this type of this level of justice is not established, then there is no peace, no hope for peace in the society. And another reason is the economic downturn. We see that the pandemic came and there was a lot of loss in in wealth of the nations. Great superpowers have lost their big wealth they were lost, and in order to recover that their wealth, they tried to recover it through the natural resources of the poor nations. So that is, and because of that, now there is more conflict in the world. So we have to write letters to these leaders of these superpowers who hold all this great power, and we should tell them that without justice, there is no hope for peace. They can get temporarily recover their wealth by robbing the natural resources of other countries, but this will only lead to more hate and more crimes, and this is what we are seeing now. And then very clearly, the leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has stated that if this continues, then we are headed for a third world war, and there is nothing that will be left after that. And it is most likely that half of the world will be destroyed because of that. So this we see that this conflict has begun, and then now it is out of control in Israel and Palestine, and so many innocent lives are being lost. And this war has the great potential of expanding. And we know that there are other sides. There is Iran and China and Russia. These blocks are being made. And there is also a country with North Korea who doesn't even have any intelligence, and they have nuclear bombs. So these nations who don't even possess any real intelligence, they are in possession of very dangerous weapons. So we see that this conflict is increasing now, and the real reason for this is that because man is away from his creator. This is the real reason. So I will thank you for inviting me to this program. I really appreciate your effort, and it's good effort that you're bringing people together so we can understand each other better. And we are a community who promote the motto of love for all and hatred for none. Even in our community, one of our community member, he has also been martyred in Gaza. He had to relocate. His house was taken, and then where he was living now, that house was also bombed, and he's been killed, and his wife is also injured and is in the hospital. But we, in response, we don't go and take revenge from innocent people. We show patience, and we pray to God that God take this in His own hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Amar. As talking about justice as a mean of peace, if only we all had the exact same idea of what that justice needs to look like. That is so, so powerful. Thank you so much. Next to join us is a personal friend, Natalie Sanandaji, survivor of October 7th Nova Music Festival massacre and public affairs officer at the Combat Antisemitism movement. Natalie, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm going to let you take it from here to tell your story.
Hello, everyone. I would like to start off by extending my heartfelt appreciation to each and every one of you for taking part in this very important conversation. Since experiencing the October 7th attacks firsthand, I've been shocked and disappointed by the world's horrific reaction to an already horrific attack. In the wake of this tragedy, I've come to a pivotal realization. I have a choice to make. I can either allow my life to be consumed by the animosity towards those who perpetrated this attack on me, my people, my country, and my home, or I can transcend the hatred and transform this traumatic experience into a catalyst for positive change. Since joining the Combat Antisemitism movement team, I've been afforded the opportunity to engage with individuals of diverse faiths and backgrounds, all united in their shared aspiration for meaningful change. Hearing each and every one of you speak today has instilled within me a renewed sense of hope, a hope that together we can overcome the pervasive forces of evil that seek to divide us. I want to express my profound gratitude to each and every one of you for igniting the flame of hope within me once again. Your collective presence and commitment to serve as a testament to unwavering determination that propels us towards a better tomorrow. Thank you for being the bearers of hope and for embracing the belief that our joint efforts can truly make a difference.
Thank you, Natalie, and we're just lucky to have you, So I really, really appreciate you coming here and speaking for everything that you've been doing with CAM. And for those of you who maybe missed it or didn't quite hear it, Natalie has taken her experience and is now working and doing an amazing, inspiring work all around the world to help combat anti-Semitism so shortly after everything she's experienced. And that is not for granted. And thank you for taking that strength and turning it into power. This is extremely inspiring. So I'd like to, on this note, to welcome our next guest, Anila Ali, President and CEO of American Muslim and Multi-Faith Women's Empowerment Council, or AMWEC, who is joining us from Washington, D.C. today. Welcome.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to thank Natalie for being brave and doing this work of God. I think it's very important for all of us to realize what is happening in our world. Hate is out of control. I am a woman, I'm a Muslim woman, and before the war started and we heard about what happened to the women that were taken, and we heard their stories. And as my colleague Soraya mentioned, we actually went to Israel to meet the women. They were Muslim women. These people missing with they're the hostages. They're Muslim. And the world doesn't care. For me, I cried when this woman, she called us and she said, "Did you not see how they were cutting the breasts of women?" And they said, "Allahu Akbar." That really hurt me. It pained me because since 9/11, we as American Muslims have been fighting to reclaim Islam from the terrorists. Our religion of peace has been hijacked. And when you hear that, you know that you have to speak up. I was a teacher in a public school system in California. My colleague came up to me after 9/11 and he said, "Oh, you're a Muslim, you're a Pakistani, there were bombers in London that killed." So I said, "Yes." He called me a terrorist. He said, "It's people like you who look like normal people that train their children to kill. And your son is at UCLA and he's a sleeper agent." I didn't know what to do. I had never dealt with that kind of blatant, brazen hate. Who do you think I turned to? My Jewish colleague, she came and she said, "Anila, we'll take care of you. We'll show you. You're going to fight this." She took me to my school district to file a complaint. And there I was, a very young teacher, crying away. How would I deal with hate in my classroom? And you know that our public schools and our universities and campuses are full of that hate. The hate that I learned to fight with my Jewish friends using Anne Frank as my guide, the little girl who always saw hope in people, that we all had goodness in us to fight that hate, to see good in everybody, and believe that in the end we will all have that Rahim, we will be like Allah. We will have that Rahim and that Kareem, the qualities of Allah in our heart, that we will forgive, we will have compassion. It seems that our people have lost compassion. Put the war aside. What happened to women is unprecedented. The Israeli women, their bodies were molested. Why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't my Muslim brothers saying that is haram? And thank you, Brother Ammar, for saying that. We cannot forget. Now, let me tell you, if that can happen to an Israeli woman, it can happen to a Muslim woman. You do remember there were two women paraded naked in India. The world did not say much. We did not do anything because we didn't care. It wasn't a Jewish woman. We have to change that thinking. We have to understand that people who have supported every marginalized community in the United States, I know personally so many civil rights leaders who are Jewish who stood with us. We have to stand with them. It is time that we stand with people of the book, our brothers and sisters, and everybody else to fight this, I call it, epidemic of hate. Thank you.
Thank you, Anila, for that very important reminder of women of all faiths around the world. And more so if you're sharing your personal story. Again, it all comes back to people and friendships and help and support. And that's what we carry with us. So thank you so much for that. Wow, what an event. I'm probably missing out a bunch of cities and countries, but I think we had LA, New York, Panama, Dubai, India, UK. Just goes to show how impactful and how important this international rally was today of the support. I want to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you who spoke here today. You sent a powerful message to the world today that love and empathy will always triumph over division and bigotry. Let us remember that our work does not end here. We must carry the spirit of this rally forward, not only in our words, but in our actions. By doing so, we can create impactful and lasting change. And for our viewers, whenever you're coming in, if you missed any part of the program or would like to revisit it in the future, please check out the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement website or any of our social media channels where the full recording is available. Thank you so much for joining us today to this special event, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Shalom, salam, and goodbye for now.